Hello, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Hey, look, it's Sunday morning. There's a new podcast, and I bet you didn't see that coming. You didn't see that coming down the street, a Sunday morning podcast. So the reason we're doing this is because Kaylee Zhang entered at Springfield, at the Springfield Biggie Super Duper 11 Acres Amherst Society Railway Springfield lots of names show back in the last weekend of January. Our very own Kaylee Zhang introduced me to a fellow named Randy Hammill, and him, along with his partner John Drake, have they're venturing into manufacturing freight cars with a company called Prototype Junction. And Kaylee introduced me to all kinds of neat people. She also introduced me to the fellow from Maine Modelers, which we want to interview him too. Lots of energy, high energy guy. Looking forward to that. But that's not what we're doing right now. So anyways, Kaylee introduced me to these guys. I sat down. I had like a 20-minute conversation with Randy Hammill. And they're trying to raise money through Indiegogo, which he explains. So what happens is I'm getting more and more confused as I'm doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, please be patient. The lines are long, and we're doing the best we can. So anyways, she introduced me to Randy Hammill. Him and John Drake have a company called Prototype Junction. I interviewed him for about 20 minutes at Springfield. I was going to include his interview in the Springfield interviews, but as you'll hear, there's a reason why I've cut it out, and I've put it as a separate interview. And also, just a couple of days ago, I talked to Randy Hammill again. So we actually have like a 40-minute interview here. It's pretty interesting. It's all about a whole new way of trying to build freight cars, construct freight cars, sell freight cars, manufacture freight cars, however you would say that. So that is it. And now our very own Bruce the Mailboy has a message for you.
Subway chimes, go!
Okay, so now I'm sitting here with Randy Hammill, and I've never met you before in my life. But Kaylee says I got to talk to Kaylee Zhang. She's a regular on our podcast.
Yep.
And she doesn't know it, but she is a regular on our podcast. And so she insisted that I come over here and talk to you. So I know nothing about what it is that we're talking about. So I see Prototype Junction. I see photos of an ATSF BX11 -12 and 13 box cars and BX. And so what are we doing here?
So what are we doing here? Well, I'm Randy Hammill, as you said, and your listeners might know me from my website, newbritainstation.com. I'm modeling the New Haven Railroad in New Britain, Connecticut.
Okay.
Circa 1946 to 1954.
All right.
I've also been in the model railroading industry for about a decade, working for True Line Trains, as well as helping out with projects for a number of other companies.
Okay.
And really wanted to start making some models that we weren't doing there and that other companies weren't making. And so this is all injection molded plastic using the same factories I've worked with for the past decade or so.
All right. So the other companies you worked for were True Line?
True Line, and a few I would have to see if they would want me to tell them that I was on their team. There's a lot of collaboration, sometimes behind the scenes on different projects.
So you've been in the industry for quite a while.
Yeah,
then.
for quite a while.
You know it well.
Yep, I know it well, and I've been modeling for quite a long time. And
Is True Line still going?
Yeah, they're still around, but at this point, the biggest problem is that Darren doesn't have any cash, and it takes a lot of money to make models, and that's why John Drake and I are doing this.
Okay.
And so Prototype Junction is our new company, and we're doing actually 16 different box cars.
16?
16 in this first run.
Holy mackerel.
So
that takes a lot of money.
It takes a lot of money, and that's so we're crowdfunding this. And
really?
It's a different approach in the model railroading industry, but it's something that has been done in gaming, board gaming, model or role-playing hobby, video games, and all that sort of stuff. And they've done very, very well with it.
Right.
And so basically it takes what, like in this case, is a $250,000 project, and instead of one company having to pay up front to make that product and hope that the people buy it, says, hey, let's find the people who want this model, and everybody can put in a little bit up front, and so that way they can get the models they want, and we can work with them through the process to make decisions as to, you know, how best to make the model they want to see, and in about a year or so, then we all get some new models.
And how does that being received?
It'll be the money itself is collected at, you can go to our website, prototypejunction.com, and that'll get you to the Indiegogo site.
Okay.
Indiegogo is a crowdfunding platform that people use to do projects like this.
So have you already started?
Yep, we've started.
What's the reaction like?
The reaction has been very good from the people that we've talked to. We've just started getting pledges, and we're at about 4 or 5% right now.
Right.
Which is just a start.
Just
but
a start.
obviously, we're hoping that we're going to get the people excited about seeing some new models and being a part of something new, and in the next few weeks get that to where we can start moving forward and making the models.
So how many weeks, days have you been?
We announced it at Cocoa Beach 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's a small prototype meet, about 250 people I think were there. And then the big show was this one. We plan launching at this time specifically because the Springfield show is about 20,000 people each year, and get it in front of as many people as we could.
How many times have you come to the Springfield show?
I would say about 10 to 12 years at this point.
Does this seem way busier this year?
It's interesting. We keep talking about that, and a lot of people say it seems a little less. Other people saying way busier. The Mallory building is now almost completely open. Every year they keep opening more and more of that. Yeah. So I think there's more floor space for people to spread out.
Right.
But it just seems every year that there's more people here.
It just seems crazy.
Yeah, the weather helped a lot this year. We didn't have a blizzard this time.
Sure, absolutely. That's always a factor, but it just seems crazy busy to me this year.
Yeah. No, it's been a really enjoyable, and that's what I love most about coming here is seeing people. I mean, it's so much fun talking to people about trains.
Okay, so before we get on in more detail about this,
one
of the things that's fascinated me about doing the podcast is all the people I've met and all the different people in the industry. And there's always the woe is me about it dying, and people are getting sick and tired probably of hearing me ask this. But I'm thinking, do you think the hobby is growing, dying, or?
I think it's growing.
Yeah.
But I think it's growing in ways that are difficult to track, and it's kind of unexpected.
I like that. I'm going to stop you right there. Yep. That's a good answer. I haven't had that answer. It's unexpected. That's the way I would describe it.
Yeah.
I think the growth is unexpected.
Yes. Yep. Because to me, so first of all, being somebody in the industry, when I talk to the manufacturers, and I know quite a few of them, sales are really good and growing. I happen to live in an area where I'm within driving distance of at least 5 hobby stores, and sales are up at all 5 hobby stores.
Really? Eh?
Over the last few years. So, from a pure money standpoint, it definitely seems like it's growing. But to me, it's also because of the internet, and this is actually one of the challenges that we're finding with what we're trying to do. It's growing in more specific areas. So people who once modeled a unique era like the 1920s, pre-Depression era, it was often hard to find somebody else that was interested in what you were doing. But nowadays, you can go online and there's Facebook groups and there's forums and all. And so each of these little niches are growing on their own, but they're growing in their own sort of separate space instead of one big location.
Right.
They used to measure the growth of the hobby by how many subscribers Model Railroader had. You can't measure it that way anymore. The people like, I'm a prototype modeler. I'm modeling a very specific thing in a very specific time and place. Everything I need, I have to special order or, kit bash or scratch build, and I do a lot of resin kits and that sort of stuff. So Model Railroader is not going to target me. I might write an article about how to do something for the people who are coming in. But model railroaders' real core bases is the casual modelers and the new modelers that need to learn how to get into this hobby and do what they do.
Yeah.
And the fact that Model Railroader is still going strong as a print magazine, when you look at other print magazines, says to me there's new people coming in the hobby. Because that's where they're picking up. They're finding it at a newsstand at Barnes & Noble and saying, hey, this looks interesting, and I want to learn more about this.
Yeah, and then we also have a whole new breed of person coming into the hobby that's younger. Finds, I always say, they're looking at Russian car crash videos.
Yep.
And then YouTube will suggest, well, maybe you'll like this. And there's like something about model railroading.
Sure.
And before you know it, people have discovered the hobby.
Yep.
Through YouTube, and you're right. That's what the phrase is. The growth is unexpected in ways that nobody could ever track before. Because I've been saying even today, it's like I'm walking around with 2 microphones and an unbelievably high-tech piece of equipment, producing a podcast that not that long ago would have taken a crew of people to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And now I have this specific thing that I can create for people and people all over the world listen to it.
Yep, absolutely, and that's the case in a lot of different industries. I play guitar, and when I was in high school, I could buy I had a 6-track multi-track recorder, so I could record my music. That was a cassette recorder because that was the only thing that was reasonably affordable.
Yeah,
the professionals were using $50,000 recorders. And then it switched into new technologies, and now you can go and buy a recorder for $100, or you don't even need to do that. You can do multi-track recording on your cell phone.
Yeah.
And you can be a musician recording like a professional in your bedroom, doing things you just couldn't do 10 or 20 years ago.
So now do you guys hope to turn this into like a full-time gig kind of thing?
Yeah, so one of the things that's really unique about the crowdfunding and the way that we're approaching it is that we want to make models for the rest of our lives, but each project is a standalone thing. Like this is, when we fund this, it's fully funded from start to finish. So when the project's completed, we can say, okay, what do we want to do next? And that's almost more exciting to us than the models themselves. I mean, I want all the models here for my layout because they're all right within my era, obviously.
Sure.
But I've got a bunch of friends who model S-scale. S-scale stuff is very hard to come by.
Right.
But if you go with a crowdfunding approach, you can say, hey, we want to make an S-scale model. Who wants this model? And get everybody, you find the people to put it up and work together as a community to build that project. Or if there's not enough to make an S-scale model viable by itself, we can also look at, because we look at this project as an entirety, it doesn't really matter if one product in that project pays for itself. Normally you want, this model's going to pay for itself. I compare it to retail. So if you're a big company, you want every local store to pay for itself. And if it's not, they close the store. To us, that doesn't matter. We look at the project as a whole and say, well, let's say we wanted to do these box cars, but we wanted to make them available in S-scale and O-scale or something like that. It would cost additional money to do the tooling, and maybe the O-scale car sells a quarter of what the HO scale sells, but since it's all covered in the total cost of the project, it would allow us or somebody else to do a project in that way and get models made that wouldn't be made any other way.
Yeah, this is so cool. This is exciting. Like, I get so excited about, this is a very new approach, and it's so cool. Like, I think this is where the hobby's going to absolutely explode.
I hope so. We're doing 16 different boxcars specifically because a normal run might be 3,000 units of a car.
Right.
And we don't think any of these cars, one of them is an L&N 40-foot double-door auto car.
Right.
Single sheath car. We don't think we'd be able to sell 3,000 units of that. But by doing 16 cars at once, we really only need to do, on average, less than 400 units per car.
Okay.
And that's, there's different paint schemes for different eras and all that. So there's really not a lot that needs to be done on any specific car.
So is this going to be like injection molded in China kind of thing?
Yep. The same factories I've used for the last decade or so.
So you have a lot of experience in the hobby, in the manufacturing, and you know that you can go in and make 400 cars.
Yeah. And we know, it'll be the 6,000 units plus for the entire project at once.
Okay.
It's just a question. So if you're familiar with the old branch line kits or even Intermountain kits, so it has separate ends and separate roofs and all that. So when they assemble these, they just cut all the parts off sprues, and they have little buckets in front of them, and it's like, okay, today I'm making cars with these ends and these roofs.
All right.
And it might be 3 days of making one car and a half a day of making a different one.
Oh, that's really a neat approach.
I certainly think so.
And you don't seem to be, one thing I find, I don't know what the right way to describe it is. I think I'll be talking to you more, but a lot of the manufacturers are very close to the vest about what they're doing and how many they're making and all that stuff. And that doesn't seem to be any kind of a concern for you. You're quite happy to say, okay, we're going to make 400 of this. And
we want to be totally transparent because this is, at the end of the day, the people who pay for any of these projects are the people buying the models.
Right.
So why not start with those people and say, hey, what should, and that'll continue during the course of the project. So one example I give is grab irons. Okay. So when we're manufacturing a car, we could do wire grab irons or we could do plastic grab irons. Most people prefer the wire because they're more durable and they tend to have a thinner profile and look better. But when you make a plastic grab iron, you can cast the nut bolt washer castings onto the grab iron itself. And the BX11 box cars, I might get these backwards, but the BX11 class, the grab irons, the attachment was above the grab iron, so the nuts are above it.
Okay.
And on the BX12s, they were below it.
Right.
So if we do wire grabs, then the grab iron, the nut bolt washer castings have to be cast onto the side of the body. So we can do one or the other.
All right.
But if we do plastic grab irons, we could install it either way so that they could match that specific detail on that prototype. Another option would be to do wire grab irons and just include nut bolt washer castings in the box and let the modeler apply them themselves. So rather than us deciding whether we think we know the right answer, we'll ask the backers, here's some options. Which options should we do? And let the backers decide and, among the majority that way.
Okay, so let's try as best you can to give me your honest opinion of the reaction. I know we just spoke of that a minute ago, but are you excited? Now, what is it, like 1 o'clock on Sunday, 12 o'clock on Sunday? You get your watch. What time is it exactly?
It is 12:05 on Sunday.
All right, so it's 12:05 on Sunday of the Springfield Show 2020. What is your reaction? Like, how is it?
So if we go off of what people have told us, I would say we're probably at an 80 to 90% success rate of converting customers, saying that, yeah, I like it, we're going to buy it. But we'll know in a few days whether they actually go home and do that. I find in general model railroaders are not shy about speaking their mind.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't get the sense that these are the sort of people just saying, oh, yeah, I'll buy it, get out of my face, we'll walk away. These are people that come over and tell us what they're modeling, how they're modeling it. They're excited about their project, and they're excited to see that we're going to have some cars that they want. The flip side to that is that even though there's 20,000 people or something that have been coming through the doors here, I don't feel like we've spoken to nearly as many people as I expected while we were here. And I don't know, whether that's true or not. It's hard to judge that when you're just talking to people.
Yeah.
And like I was saying before, the modeling community seems more fragmented because you can get narrowed down. I'm in a number of New Haven modeling groups because I model the New Haven Railroad.
Right.
So getting the word out to a number of people, there doesn't seem to be that central location where you can get the community as a whole.
Yeah, well, which is what the unexpected change, unexpected growth. It's now we all got to figure out.
Yep.
It's like I say with the podcasting. The thing I've noticed with the podcasting is like YouTube videos are very popular, but what I've noticed with podcasting is if you know of it, you're in.
Yep.
You're listening, but then it's kind of like a flat Earth thing. You get to the end of those people, and it
just drops off.
It just drops off, and you'll be walking up. What's a podcast? Who are you? You know, and I'm like, well, trust me, there's a lot of people listening that are really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So how does this crowdsourcing, is there a certain amount you have to donate, or do you donate any amount? Or
So you can actually just donate money if you want, and you can pick any amount. But the way the platform is called Indiegogo.
Yeah, right.
And so what happens is Indiegogo collects the money.
Right.
We don't have access to that money unless we're fully funded.
Okay.
So if we don't fund it fully, they automatically refund the money to the backers. And then on the site itself, there's perks. That's their term for things you can choose. So you can pick a perk for $47. That's for one car at a 5% discount. It's a retail price of $50.
Right.
We have some show specials going on right now. So for $84, you get a 16% discount off 2 cars. But that also gives you that discount off of your total order. So as we go to production, usually in about 9 to 12 months, we'll be ready to order materials and actually do the production itself. So that's when modelers would pick their final order. They can add to the order, and they'll get the discount, whatever discount they selected based on the perk they picked.
So it's all pretty self-explanatory, is it?
It is. It's a little different than what people are used to.
Yeah, it's just different,
Yep.
for sure, which is exactly what we're just talking about.
But they'll be available ready to run, fully decorated, but we're also doing decorated or undecorated kits.
Okay, now how do you think that'll go? Because I think I'm starting to get a sense that if somebody was starting to make kits that weren't out of line price-wise, it would be more and more. I'm starting to get a sense that we're almost kind of going back to, okay, this is great. We all got ready to run stuff, but we were all kind of sitting around making stuff.
Yep.
What happened to that?
Well, there's a couple things that I think Joe Fugate did an awesome editorial years ago. It's probably 5 years ago. It was around the time when Model Railroad Hobbyist was starting.
Right.
Saying that he keeps hearing the same thing. People aren't building models anymore. They're not building kits. They're not doing this. But the structure, especially the craftsman structure industry exploded with the laser cutting available.
Yeah.
And his point was also that people are building layouts, and you only have so much time.
Yeah.
And so if you're building 400 freight cars, then you're not building your layout or you're not building your structures. And so I think there's room for both.
Yeah.
I can tell you, Tangent makes undecorated kits. Rapido makes undecorated kits. Intermountain does. Exact Rail does. So there are people that are producing kits. What did disappear were the decorated kits, because
Okay. Yeah.
for a manufacturer to guess, oh, you know what, we're going to sell 100 of this kit decorated, they might sit on that inventory for a long time because it might not be the right paint scheme or something. But since we're doing them to order, we can say, sure, we'll just, we'll have them run them through the paint shop, do the paint, and then you just have to assemble the parts.
This sounds all very cool. I'm very excited about the new world of model railroading.
I know.
It's very, very exciting. It's just you end up talking to all kinds of people doing all kinds of cool things. So tell us about your layout.
The layout is New Britain, Connecticut, and it's been taking far too long for me to build it.
Sure, because you're interested in other things.
Well, and actually after the New England prototype meet last year, I had an operating session, and there were a couple things I decided I wanted to fix.
Right.
And I've also found some other photographs and a few things that I just wasn't really happy with, so I ended up basically taking apart about a third of the layout and rebuilding it.
Oh, really?
And at the same time, I was also building the last edition on it, which is a yard that was missing on it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to get that back operating so I can do some more op sessions before the prototype meet. And I always have it open for the open house and so on. But it's a single city, and New Britain was a very unique place. If you're looking at the layout, because it's a single city, and my basement's only 10 by 20 feet.
Which is plenty for if you want to build a layout. It doesn't have to be massive.
Yep. So the center of town between what's Main Street and Elm Street is about 70% to scale. And then the rest of the layout's all compromises because it has to go around corners and so on. But to the east of the station, it's all small industries. There's 4 or 5 coal dealers that were there. There's lumber dealers, a couple of grocers and stuff that were getting reefers and all. And there's a couple of big industries on that side. But the west side of town had Russell and Irwin and Corbin Screw, which were both big hardware manufacturers. Fafner Bearing was there, and then Stanley Works was the big industry, and they had 3 plants in town.
Right.
And so there's these massive industries on the west side of town. Yeah. And in the era that I'm modeling, I think New Britain was still the producer of something like 30% of the world's hardware.
Really?
It was incredible. There's one industry that I can't model. It's a little bit south of the yard I'm putting in, New Britain Machine Company, and until the 1960s, they were the primary supplier of parts for Napa.
Huh.
So this was an area where it was known for its industry, and now it's simply a single track that runs through the city to get to Plainville, which is there's no industry served by rail at all anymore.
And it's fascinating how things change. And it's cool because I think you and I could have endless conversations. I think you and I are on the same page of something's happening.
Yeah.
And we just got to put our finger on it.
Absolutely.
And I love that you guys are going out in a whole. How did you guys come up with this idea? You and I'm sorry, your partner's name?
John Drake is my partner.
And so you guys are sitting around drinking beer.
Yeah, well, a little bit of that. I've been working on the idea for quite a while. Even at True Line, we were looking, I wanted to do some projects. And ultimately, in my case, it just came down to the fact that I can't afford to pay for this sort of thing up front to make the model happen. So, and because I also am a role-playing gamer, I'm very familiar with the crowdfunding that's been going on in that industry. And
that's been successful, hasn't it?
Really, really successful. In fact, there was somebody who came in who heard, was talking to me today asking if I was involved in one. It's a set of dice, which is for a game. It's just dice. It's like a $60 set of dice. They were looking for $40,000, and in the first week or so, they've raised $2.5 million.
Holy mackerel.
Now, I don't really expect the model railroad industry to be doing $2.5 million project. That'd be like 50,000 units.
Yeah.
But I certainly think that 6,000 units, 400 of a given car is certainly should be well within the range.
So I'm assuming on this indie.gogo or it tells what the final goal is?
Yes, it's $250,000, $250,000.
And for that, then you'll be able to produce these cars.
Then the cars will get produced because we won't have to worry about the cash flow issues, which is what's been, everybody's experience is different in manufacturing in this hobby because every business is a different, they have different expertise. Some people have the ability to, they're tool and die makers. They can cut their own tools and stuff.
This is very cool. This is really cool. I feel like, okay, this is something that there's 1,000 questions that I haven't asked that I should have. And I can see us talking many, many times because you kind of want to follow along because you think to yourself, man, if this works.
Yeah.
If this works. Now, somebody else is going to do it, but you'll be the pioneer.
But that's what we want. We want other people to do this. We started a Facebook group, prototypejunction.com.
All right.
Or Prototype Junction on Facebook. The whole purpose of that is just to get people talking about models that they want manufacturers to make. We can't possibly make every car. We don't want to make every car. We want to see more cars from Scale Trains and Exact Rail and Tangent and Rapido and Intermountain and Walthers. We want to see them making good cars that we can use on our layouts or locomotives or, whatever it might be, scenery, structures. There's so many things that could be done.
I think this hobby's going to grow like nuts.
And I think there's a lot of people that know what they want. They just don't know how to do it. And aside from us, being able to prove that we can make cars, we also have connections that we can help other people do this if they want to. And that's something that, it shouldn't be just about us.
So do you already have in mind a manufacturer in China?
It's the same factory I've already used, and we've got our quote. We know exactly what it's going to take to do our project.
Okay.
And it's, it's pretty much the same as it took to do any project we've done before. A boxcar is a pretty straightforward project, other than the fact that we're doing a bunch of them at once.
And have you worked full time in this industry?
Not full time. I've got my own. I've got an IT business. I have a part-time job. This is
it's a love. It's a passion as much as anything. But it's like anybody that's in the hobby.
Yeah,
it's a cottage. This is going to be great. This is going to be really cool to see.
If we just make the cars and don't lose money, it's a win for us. We get 16 more cars to put on my layout.
Yeah.
So.
But there must be some plan to make some money, though.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like everything, it was.
It's a business.
It is, but because every project is self-supporting, it stands alone. This project is sort of a prototype, so that we can get a handle on because there's other fees. We have to pay Indiegogo fees. There's obviously all the credit card processing. We'll have to figure out how we handle the shipping. That sort of thing. And most small businesses hope they can make a profit in the first 5 years. We're just trying to make sure we don't lose money on the first project so that we can fine-tune for the future projects.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yep.
If you can get through this one and it's a success, then you're thinking to yourself, okay, now we're on to something. It's a complete test tube.
Yeah, on many different levels.
So do you know Chris Adams?
I know Chris Adams very well.
Yeah, we call him Chris Fitness on the podcast.
Yes, although he has not been riding the bike as much lately.
I know. I've taken his place. I'm riding my bike.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right.
No, I spent a lot of time down at his place working on the layout. He hosts the the photo library for the New Haven
Right, he
Historical and
does,
Technical
yeah.
Association. So we're cataloging photos down there, and he's done lots of work on my layout. And
So when next time you go and you see him, the next time you're talking to him on either on phone or wherever, you
Yep.
say, "Hey, it's Chris Fitness."
Yep, I will do that. I'll see him this week. So
All right. So the hardest part about these short segments is ending them.
yep.
So the best thing I've come up with is say goodbye, Randy.
Okay, you want the usual goodbye, Randy, or
Say goodbye, Randy.
I'm sure that's what it usually is, and I'm sure we'll talk again. So goodbye. Thank you.
We absolutely will.
Yep.
Say goodbye, Randy.
Goodbye, Randy.
All right. So there, I've hit the button, Randy. So this is part 2 of the Randy Hammill Chronicles.
Yep. could be a whole bunch of these, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. There could be a whole bunch of these with a whole bunch of people. This podcast was an incredibly bad idea on my part.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Okay, so we just heard your interview from Springfield when it was the first time I ever met you.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about Prototype Junction. And
Yes.
And now it's a couple weeks later. And so where are we at now with Prototype Junction?
Well, we're still trying to get pledges in to see if we can make this particular project run. It's still actually pretty low. It's like 8% right now. So John and I are working on trying to figure out how to get the word out. The biggest thing seems to be getting it in front of as many people as possible. And I don't think we ended up talking to as many people as we thought we would see at Springfield. We were kind of looking at how we ended up there, and I think we would have been better off if one of us wandered around and just tried to capture people instead of waiting for them to come to the booth. But since this is new for us too, it's all a learning process, and we'll keep doing what we can to try and get this one funded, and if not, we'll regroup and figure out how to go from there.
Okay, so we're probably talking around the 22nd, 23rd of February. So how much longer will it be extended?
March 9th, Indiegogo gives us a maximum of 60 days, and we can't extend this particular project beyond that. We could always relaunch it, but, I think that we have to look and see whether, if we don't meet the funding in that time period, try and figure out why we're not meeting the funding. Is it a question of whether people are not comfortable with crowdfunding, or we're just not getting it in front of enough people, or is it the wrong project, that sort of thing?
Right. And where are you and John at right now? What are your initial thoughts right now?
Right now, I think it's mostly that we're finding it very difficult to find any central place to go to get the biggest group of people. On Facebook, there's a lot of different groups. Most of them don't allow manufacturers to announce projects. So that's one challenge we're running into. I think the largest groups on Facebook are about 50,000 people. There's like an HO scale model railroad one. But according to Facebook, if you start paying for advertising, there's 3.7 million people that claim they are model railroad, or I forget the term they used, railway modelers or something like that.
Oh, really? See, now I've been searching for that myself. I advertise a little bit some of the individual podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't. So, how did you find that there was 3.7 million? What were the magic things you put in to find that?
I was just putting in keywords to try and identify. Like when you advertise on Facebook, you can create your own audience, basically.
Right.
And I think the one I found was railway transport modeling, if I recall. But that's worldwide, all scales, all eras. Whether you're modeling Europe or Australia or Japan or the United States. But it's not something that you can easily just pick and target. That's the thing that was interesting. They make it a little complicated. And then it's also a question of who's actually online at any given point in time and who's looking at it. But that was the biggest group that I found was that keyword, railway transport modelers.
Huh, you'd wonder. You'd think HO scale or railroad or modeling or anything like that would work.
Yeah, the HO scale modeling group, I think, was like around 50,000 people. The NMRA group has tens of thousands of people. I don't remember the exact amount. So you can look at groups and see how big those
Yeah.
groups are. But since they don't allow us to make announcements on that, it makes it's not really helpful at this point.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't allow you to make an announcement here either.
Yeah, exactly. Why would modelers want to know about new stuff coming out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. What's the point of that?
Yeah.
Uh, so okay. So what's next if on March 9th you don't hit your projection? Because it actually doesn't seem like that bad of an idea to me.
Well, yeah, I think the process itself is well proven in other hobbies and other industries as well. And so I think it's a matter of time. It's just the first thing is to try and get a sense as to what the biggest challenge was getting pledges for this. I'm well known to a small group of people, having worked at True Line Trains as well as just my own website. And we all have our sort of, um, circle of influence of modelers and stuff, people we know, but it's no, I'm not going to claim that I'm a big person or mover and shaker in the industry, obviously. Um, Part of it is going to try and get our names out there more. I mean, participating more and more on the forums and stretching out to areas that we aren't as familiar with. Um, I'm really familiar with the New Haven modeling groups because that's what I model. Um, I have noticed that it's very regional. Like the further south and west you go, the less they know who True Line Trains is, um, because they're a Canadian company. So it's just something that people aren't aware of, I'm not even that worried about whether they know that company. That just happens to be one that I've worked with. But so I think that's part of it, is getting out there. And we're also working with the historical societies, and I think it may be more working with them and maybe getting some ads out and stuff well in advance of the next launch.
Right. Okay. So does True Line Train still exist?
Well, in theory, yes. I mean, it was basically just Darren, the owner, and myself. And I don't think Darren has any plans to do anything. I'm happy to jump in and help if he's ready to do so. But I don't anticipate anything to happen there in the near future. And one of the possibilities, if we decide to do a different project, would be to see if we could lease some of the tooling from Darren, and build on some of those projects.
Right. Okay. So now here we are. It's we got probably 20 or maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks left to go.
Yep.
And you're not getting the funding, but you guys aren't gonna give up though, eh?
No, I mean, this is what I really want to do, is make model trains, and John's really excited about doing it as well, because part of it is that we want to get models made that we want. Obviously, I mean that's pretty typical in the industry. So it's just finding the way we can make that happen.
And do you have to? Because you need what, $250,000? Is that what you need?
For this particular project, yes. And that fully funds it. So that's not like just paying for the tooling, but that's paying for the production of all of the models that would reach that pledge goal. It's about 6,000 units.
Okay. So anybody that wants to go to your website, I'm on your website now, and I see about where's the best. How do you easily get to the part where you buy the cars?
So there's links at the top of each post that I put, or on the upper right side, you'll see a link that says "To the Models," and that goes to the Indiegogo site.
Oh yeah, there it is, right there, right below ordering, to the
Yep.
models. Okay, so you're still plugging away. You've raised 27,000 so far.
Yep. It's starting to creep up again, and these types of things, you do see a big jump near the end, typically, because that's once you're reaching the deadline, it's either go or no go. But it's still a pretty big leap right now for us. So.
Yeah. And nobody's risking anything because they probably don't charge the credit card till it goes ahead or something. Eh?
They charge it right away, but we don't have access to the money until 15 days after it fully funds. So if we don't reach our goal, Indiegogo automatically refunds the money.
Oh, okay, cool. And do you have to have such a big project? Like, can it be a smaller project?
Well, that may be the next approach. Part of the reason why we looked at this was they're just models that other companies are probably not likely to do because they are a smaller, niche product, I guess. Most of the stuff that would be for large quantities, the ARA or AAR box cars have already been done. So it's a matter of trying to find something that's doable. But part of the reason is because um, by approaching it the way we're doing it, it allows us to do a lot more variations right up front. So you don't have to worry about whether the first run is enough to satisfy the need for a second run to add more variations. Um, like the auto cars, I don't know if they would be viable on their own to do a full project. So by including parts of those on the sprue for the Santa Fe cars, it gives us an ability to do those for a lot less money than you would do if they were a project on their own.
Okay, so you've had some experience dealing with China manufacturers, I'm
Yes.
assuming.
Yep.
So is it hard for them to is it hard to get them to do a smaller project?
Well, it's a combination of how much work they want to put into it because they want their people to be working on a project for as long as possible, right? To do a project that takes them a week only pays for their factory for a week, and so I think that's part of it. But the other factor is just covering the cost, basically. So you've got to cover the cost of the tooling, and a lot of times people expect to just kind of break even on the first project, and that's kind of what we expect as well. But then they'd add a second variation, and on the second run, you'd spend a little bit on tooling, but the rest of it would be starting to show a profit.
Okay, all right.
But so what happens is that if you want a 1,000-unit run, if the factory's willing to do that, and you're doing a new project, and your tooling is $60,000, then the price per unit goes way up.
Yeah, yeah. So you're because it seems to me like what I'm starting to pick up from all the interviewing I've done, that seems like 6,000 cars is kind of the target number to make it reasonable. Does that seem right?
I think most would say about 3,000 is the minimum. I mean, I think 5 or 6,000 is what people are shooting for, but I'm not sure that's typical. I mean, at Trueline, we did have a few models that were in the 5,000-6,000 unit range on the first run. But I think 3,000 to 4,000 is probably a more typical run, depending on what you're doing. Locomotives probably fewer than freight cars, for example, because they're more expensive.
Yeah. So if you guys decide, if the Indiegogo thing doesn't work out or the crowdfunding thing doesn't work out, and you guys want to do a car, you got to come up with some money ahead of time to cover the tooling costs and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, everything's paid up front. So you pay for the tooling and the development, you pay for any samples, you pay for the production run, and then people pay you when they receive their models, usually. And that's really not an option for us. So Indiegogo is not as popular a site for launching these things as Kickstarter, and I don't know if that would make a difference because we don't anticipate people. There's people that just like supporting projects like this, even if it's not a product that they would normally purchase.
Right.
I don't know whether that's something we could expect if we went to a different platform, but I think it's going to be a matter of trying to find a way to get the word out more, maybe find a different project, or find one where we could try and come in with a lot less money for the initial funding.
Yeah, I think that's the one of the things about the hobby is it's kind of splintered, and I think right now we're in the very early days of gathering us all together through social media. I mean, social media made a huge difference, as I go on and on and on about. But I think we're still in the early days of getting everybody in the same room kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and ironically, I think the social media also has the effect of splitting people into smaller groups because you can find those that are, specific about what you like to model.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we hit the road and make this into one big happy show?
Well, I mean, we're looking to do something one way or the other. So I guess ideally, what we want to know is if this doesn't work, um, let us know why. What can we do differently? What didn't we do this time that people expected? Um, anything, any feedback is great from our standpoint, which is usually not a problem with model railroaders. Um,
No, it's not.
uh, but mostly I don't know. This is just an extension of the hobby for me. It's just getting together with people, and so I think it's just a matter of time. But for the next 20 days, obviously, we want people to spread the word as much as possible, and let's see if we can make it work the first time out.
Yeah. And so what did you feel like the response was from the people that you did get in contact with at Springfield?
It's across the board. It's been very, very strong. There's been very, very few people that have either not understood the crowdfunding approach or been against it. I fully expect that there's going to be people that we know that won't buy it unless they can touch the model and see if it's something they want, that sort of thing. And so that's fine. They're not the people we're really interested in, but the people we've seen face to face seem to all be very excited about it and seem to be on board with it. And if we could get in front of more people, and that's kind of why one of the things that I'm hoping that things like this podcast do is it gives people a little bit more opportunity to hear me in person rather than just the stuff that I ramble on about on the blog or webpage. But yeah, I think it still seems like it's definitely a good. I think there's a good future in it. It's just a matter of tweaking it until we figure out how it's going to work best.
Yeah. So your page is prototypejunction.com.
Yes.
Just it's that simple. Prototype. And were you surprised that you got that URL?
Oh no, actually, I've owned that for I want to say close to a decade at this point. So
Okay.
I knew I wanted to do something, and that was something that I came up with. And for a long time, I was like, I don't know if I like this or not, but I haven't come up with anything I like better. So, and John really liked the name, so that's what we stuck with.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about John before we go.
So John is a good modeling buddy. He's got a much better knowledge of railroading in general than I do. My focus is very narrow on the New Haven and freight cars in particular. But he's got a really good understanding of railroading across the country and in a lot of different eras, from the transition era through the 70s and 80s. And he's been trying to decide what he wants to model. And it seems like every week he's picked a different place and time to do so. But I think he's finally narrowing that down. He's just a really interesting guy. He was did the Union Pacific management trainee program for a year,
Right.
and then ended up leaving that because his wife didn't want to move west, and so he ended up coming back east. And he spent most of his life in as an executive in reinsurance, and for a long time was modeling an N scale. Including doing so for 6 years when they lived on Grand Cayman, and talk about a place where it's hard to get modeling supplies.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
It's funny because when he was getting ready to leave, he put up some ads for just stuff he was selling, and he was doing using shelf brackets to do a shelf layout, and so he had just put them up out on whatever the equivalent of Craigslist was or something like that. And somebody came to buy them, and he's like, "So, what do you need all these for?" And he's like, "Well, you're probably not going to believe it, but I'm building a model railroad." And he had no idea that this other guy was, on the island trying to build a railroad. And so he was really excited to get all the supplies he needed to build his bench work from John. So
I think this hobby's way bigger than anybody realizes.
I think so too. I'm always amazed at how many new people I keep running into just in our neck of the woods that have layouts. I found out the guy across the street from me has one. So
there you go.
And the only reason I know that is he saw the sign in front when I had an open house for the NMRA group, and so I had a sign out in the front, and he asked about it, and So
There you go.
otherwise, I would have had no idea.
All right. Well, I hope this goes well. I hope all of a sudden we get a flurry of activity and you can pull it off, and we'll see where we end up.
Yep, one way or the other, we're making progress. And if it doesn't work the first time out, then we will see what we need to do to make it happen in the future.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Randy.
Thank you.
Well, I think that made complete sense. Seemed like it made complete sense. I'm sure it made more sense to others than it did to me, but I think the general idea of the whole exercise is that they're going to raise money like one of those GoFundMe jobs or starter programs, or in this case, Indiegogo. And basically they raise the money before they ever get started. The customers sign up or agree to pay for the cars, and away they go. And I feel very confident, having talked to Randy. I got very much the impression from Randy that these guys knew what they were doing. And of course, they were very much respectable businessmen. And I think it's a really good idea. I think it's a new way of doing things. And the more support we give to them, the better chance they have of doing it. So I felt like, hey, let's give them a proper little podcast right here on Sunday morning. I can see Rod Deary probably fell out of his chair when he saw that he had a podcast on Sunday morning. Martin Jenkins, Peter Borchardt, who's always looking for something to listen to. Brooks Willig, all those guys, everybody in the AML family. However big that family is, it's a lot bigger than we think it is. I'm positive it's a lot bigger than we think it is. So I guess I'll give out our email address, which is modelerslife@gmail.com. That's modelers with one L like railroad, not two L's like Lionel. That's the best I could come up with today. I'm sure I could do better, but that's what we'll go with. In the essence of time, we'll go with the old standard. One L like railroad, two L's like Lionel. And we have a website. If you go to the website, it's amodelerslife.com. Have all kinds of stuff there, the latest shows. There's quite a few upcoming shows on there. You'll get to see what's coming ahead. And I think that's it. I think we pretty much covered everything. So go on over to prototypejunction.com. Check it out. See what you think. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. I hope these guys have a half a chance. And we'll take it from there. So remember, a Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10 freight car manufacturers.
And now it's time for the New Jersey Transit Elevator Escalator Report. Take it away, Dave.
Good morning, everybody. Cranford eastbound's back in service. Plainfield westbound also back in service. Vendor had a good day out there yesterday. Hamilton number 3 is out. We think that one's going to be a brake adjustment, but we're going to check it in this morning. The vendor's on his way. At Westmont, we have the DCA out there today taking a look at the testing on the doors, making sure that the safety edges are back in tolerance after the outage yesterday. Newark Penn Station number 3 is out with a skirt panel reset, and Newark Penn Station number 17 is back in service after a reset this morning.
It's another Lincoln Homer.